Frida Kahlo, the woman who turned personal agony into a multi-century cultural phenomenon. If you think you've got problems, wait until you see what Frida juggled on a daily basis. She didn't just break barriers. She took them, painted them neon pink, and hung them upside down to watch society get dizzy. To start, let's place Frida on the timeline. Born in 1907 in Mexico City, though she liked to claim 1910 to align with the Mexican Revolution. Right off the bat, that's a power move, synchronizing your birth with national upheaval for branding purposes. At 6, she gets polio, which leaves her with a limp. Most kids at that age worry about cooties. Frida got a preview of chronic suffering that would define her existence. By her teens, she was set on becoming a doctor. Imagine that alternative universe where Frida Kahlo ends up prescribing antibiotics instead of painting her spine as a cracked pillar. Spoiler, that universe is far more boring. At 18, fate decided polio wasn't enough and smacked her with a bus accident so catastrophic it makes Final Destination scenes look like mild inconveniences. We're talking fractured spine, pelvis, ribs, and a metal handrail piercing her body. While she was stuck in bed for months, Frida's mom rigged up a special easel and mirror so she could paint. Thus began the saga of one of the most brutally honest self-portraitists in history. Before we jump into her love life and legendary brow situation, understand this. Frida didn't paint because she was bored. She painted because reality roundhouse kicked her, and art was her counterpunch. Ready to meet the woman who made vulnerability her brand? Hang tight. Frida's art was a middle finger to sugar-coated aesthetics. No polite still lifes or gentle pastels, nope. She delivered raw autobiographical imagery that dragged you through her pain and forced you to say, "Damn, that's intense." She painted self-portraits because, as she famously said, she was often alone and she knew herself best. These weren't glam selfies, these were confessions in oil and pigment. In her canvases, she'd show her broken body, her miscarriages, her heartbreak. She'd load the background with Mexican iconography, bright colors, and a vibe that screamed, "I'm Mexican, I'm suffering, and I will not apologize for any of it." Her signature unibrow and faint mustache, she left them untouched, framed them, glorified them. She basically said, "If my facial hair offends you, that's a you problem." In an era obsessed with Eurocentric beauty standards, Frida flaunted her indigenous features and took pride in her heritage. She wasn't trying to fit in. She was rewriting the rules so thoroughly that fitting in became irrelevant. Then we have Diego Rivera, the muralist giant who was older, larger, and famous. Frida married him in 1929, forming an alliance that was equal parts art, love, hate, and emotional dumpster fires. Affairs on both sides? Check. Screaming matches, passionate reconciliations, political scheming. It was like the world's most volatile reality show, except the protagonists were painting masterpieces in between arguments. People gossip about celebrity couples today, but Frida and Diego set the blueprint for relationship drama. At least they channeled that chaos into creativity. Instead of subtweets, they had gallery shows. Frida wasn't just along for Diego's ride. She had her own orbit of influences. She mingled with intellectuals, revolutionaries, and artists. When Leon Trotsky fled the USSR, he found refuge in their home, and Frida, never one to shy away from complexity, allegedly had an affair with him too. Think your life is complicated because of your weird Tinder date last week? Frida's personal life makes that look like a children's tea party. Frida wasn't a casual bystander. She wore traditional Tijuana dresses as a statement, embracing indigenous identity as a power move against Eurocentric norms. She dabbled in communist ideology, not because it was trendy, but because she genuinely believed in challenging oppressive structures. Her art and her wardrobe both screamed, "Mexico first," at a time when Western influence loomed large. This cultural pride gave her work an authenticity that art critics would be slobbering over decades later. She was real before being real became a hashtag. By the 1930s and 40s, her art started cropping up in international exhibitions. André Breton, a bigwig in surrealism, tried to label her as one of them. Frida shrugged and basically said, "I'm not painting dreams, this is my reality." That's like telling Gordon Ramsay he's making pizza when he's actually inventing a new cuisine. She refused to be boxed into an art movement, and that independence only heightened her mystique. As her fame grew, her health got worse. Multiple surgeries, chronic pain that would make most of us curl up and weep, and even an amputated leg later in life. You'd think at some point she'd say, "I'm done," But Frida Kahlo didn't know the meaning of surrender. She once showed up to her solo exhibition in Mexico, lying in a 4-poster bed installed in the gallery. People walked in expecting a normal art show and got Frida, literally horizontal, greeting them as if to say, "Oh, you thought I was going to cancel because I'm half dead? Cute!" She died in 1954 at just 47. After her death, her reputation took a nap before roaring back in the late 20th century. The feminist movement rediscovered her as a symbol of resilience, an icon who refused to conform to feminine ideals or hide her suffering. The LGBTQ community found common ground in her fluid identity and refusal to bow to traditional norms. Marginalized communities saw a champion who embraced her roots proudly. In short, Frida's afterlife was about to pop off like a grand finale fireworks show. By the late 1970s and 80s, Kahlo mania was in full swing. Academics analyzed her work, curators fought over exhibitions, and suddenly Frida Kahlo merchandise started rolling out. Today, her image is slapped on tote bags, phone cases, coffee mugs, socks, and tattoos. She's a pop culture juggernaut, sharing iconic status with the likes of Marilyn Monroe and Che Guevara. Except Frida's brand is pain as power, honesty as armor, and identity as art. Talk about a marketing angle. Come for the anguish, stay for the authenticity. In 2002, the Salma Hayek-led biopic Frida launched her persona even further into the stratosphere. The movie introduced millions more to her story, turning the once obscure details of her life into dinner party conversation. People who never stepped foot in a gallery suddenly knew about Frida's bus accident, her love affairs, her brazen self-portraits. Even social media got in on the action. How many Instagram bios quote Frida Kahlo without people even knowing half her story? What does all this mean in a world obsessed with curated perfection and digital filters? It means Frida Kahlo's legacy is basically screaming at us to embrace our scars. She didn't hide her limps, her wounds, or her unibrow. She didn't pretend happiness. She painted pain. And guess what? The world respected her more for it. In an age where everyone's trying to look flawless and pretend their life is a highlight reel, Frida stands as a massive counterpoint. What if being true to your messiness is the ultimate flex? That's the lesson here. Vulnerability, cultural pride, personal struggle, and a relentless refusal to conform made her timeless. Also, consider this. Most artists hope their work outlives them. Frida achieved that so spectacularly that her persona, her story, and her face are now separate entities. She's a muse to feminists, a saint to some, a rebel to others, and a monetizable icon to capitalist markets, which is ironic, considering her leftist leanings. She transcended art and became a universal metaphor for resilience. So what now? You can roll your eyes at the merchandise and call it commercialization, or you can acknowledge that not many artists achieve this kind of cultural immortality. Frida Kahlo reminds us that art can be a personal war cry, a testament to survival, and a legacy that shapeshifts with each generation. If you ever feel like life's kicking you down, remember Frida lying in her bed at the gallery saying, "I'm still here, and so are my paintings." If that doesn't inspire you to stop whining, nothing will. She turned broken bones into brushstrokes, heartbreak into color palettes, and a single eyebrow into an emblem recognized worldwide. Now it's your call. Dive deeper. Look at her paintings, read her letters, and realize that inside every masterpiece is a human story screaming to be heard. Frida's story just happens to scream louder and truer than most.